But it's just so ironic that this has turned into a discussion about trans issues that it never was going to be in the first place, which would indicate that this is an ideology that's obsessed with itself in a way.
Baroness Fox, who was apparently disinvited from a discussion about the importance of discussion at Royal Holloway. Baroness Claire Fox joins us now. Morning, Claire.
Good morning.
Now, I'm a bit suspicious when people say they're about being cancelled and entirely, because obviously everyone has some platforms, but there's a specific event that's happened to you. You were supposed to go there, and why did they say you weren't welcome?
So it should be clarified that I'm sure that anyone listening would think, goodness knows that woman's got far too many platforms. Who cares if she doesn't end up in the university? And the important thing about this story is not me, actually. It's about the Debating Society, who wanted me to speak. However daft that might be to some people, they invited me to speak. It was all organised. They were quite excited. We're advertising it. And the student union, who'd even vetted me and decided that I was acceptable as an outside speaker, then panicked when 6 universities, other societies, objected to me on the basis that apparently some previous ages-old tweet where I retweeted a Ricky Gervais joke they described as transphobic, full of hate. That meant I was a threat to the safety of students on campus. And the Debating Society students, who, were, young people trying to encourage people to hear different opinions and so on, suddenly came under an enormous amount of pressure from the student union that would destroy their reputation, that they would put their fellow students in jeopardy. Lots and lots of, you can imagine correspondence telling them that this was unacceptable. Eventually, a week before the talk, which had been organised months ago, cancelled the event. And a lot of those students were very upset and wanted to do something about it, but didn't feel that they could because the student union weren't letting them.
And they didn't want to be accused. They probably don't want to be accused of that thing, transphobia itself. I mean, I've seen the joke from Ricky Gervais. This is not a wild part of the internet you were retweeting from. That's a joke that he made on a Netflix special, which has been seen by tens of millions of people. It is a fundamentally funny joke about language, about the changing descriptions of trans people and women. It has a glint in its eye. It's ironic, which is so much of what Ricky Gervais is all about. We cannot live in a world where you're not allowed to find a joke that a mainstream comedian makes funny, can we?
Well, I mean, obviously that's a very serious point, but it's also worth noting I was never intending to go to Royal Holloway University and talk about trans issues. That wasn't what the talk was about. It was about the importance of debate, would you believe? And it might have come up if somebody had asked me, but it wasn't my focus at all. I was actually going to talk about tolerance, very high-mindedly. I was going to talk about John Locke and the whole spirit in which you accept other people's views. Even though if I had been going to talk about gender and sex and that controversy, I don't think somebody should have been cancelled for that, of course. But it's just so ironic that this has turned into a discussion about trans issues that it never was going to be in the first place, which would indicate that this is an ideology that's obsessed with itself in a way, that it demands and coerces a type of speech from somebody that's not based on anything they're going to say in the first place. They demand that I shouldn't be speaking on this when I was never going to be speaking on it in the first place.
And that doesn't do any and that doesn't do any favours. We try. I think the view that I personally have is that there's an awful lot of people out there, people who are trans, who just deserve to be left alone, to have respect, to be treated well, and to be left to get on their own life. There are moments where their rights come into conflict with other people's rights, and those need to be discussed. But ultimately, it does no one any favours to harp on about things needlessly for the point of controversy. And your point here is that you weren't trying to do that.
No, I mean, I do. It is true that I'm reasonably well known as being gender critical. I believe in the biological reality of sex, and I'm not trying to rehearse that for the sake of it. I mean, that is known. I mean, to be honest with you, I was rather miffed that the reason that they cancelled me was that I retweeted a Ricky Gervais speech. I mean, you do think, God, I'm a public figure, I speak a lot. You'd think they'd find something else that I said a bit more meaty to cancel me on. But I want to stress, and this is genuinely important, the reason why this has come to light is because the students who had invited me, some of them were just so upset that they felt that all the work they'd done, I mean, advertising it and going through all the bureaucratic nonsense to get me okayed as a speaker was completely wasted. It was the first event that they were having post-lockdown, live event, and they were quite excited about it. And they just felt abandoned. And I think that the important thing here is not that I was cancelled, but that students who are sometimes caricatured and characterized as snowflakes, this was a group of students who wanted to have discussion, and they were denied doing it by the student union putting them under so much pressure. But also, very importantly, the university didn't intervene or step in to defend the debating society. Indeed, the principal of the university, if anything, said, oh, well, we've talked to the student union, they went through the right procedures, nothing to see here, what's the problem? And I think that tells us a great deal that's worrying about the atmosphere on university campuses when the grassroots students who are not snowflakey, want open discussion, want to hear people from across the political range, are actually abandoned and told that's too controversial, you're not allowed to hear it.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point, Claire. And, wherever you stand on any side of a political argument, it's just important that people are allowed to talk about things, surely, that everyone must be able to agree on that eventually. Claire, great to speak to you. Thank you for joining us.
Cheers,
That's Claire Fox there talking about what happened to her. Mike makes the point, man makes joke, woman pays the price.